afternoon, everyone. I am here today with my co host, James. Say hi,
Hello,
James.
everyone.
I'm so excited to talk to you folks today because we thought we would kind of do a recap of like Plain Rainbows. So, the reason that we created Plain Rainbows is because we aspired to create content that is both affirming and it's visible and it's supportive to LGBTQ, Amish, and Anabaptist folks. And I feel like, in a way, we have really done that. Wouldn't you say, James?
Absolutely. I
Well,
think we made really positive impact this summer during Pride Month, which was in June, and we're recapping this in September. But gays are always late to everything, so
hey,
it
we
is
have to
what it
get
is.
prepared.
We have to get prepared. That's right.
We have to get ready. Just
Right,
let
and
folks know
and
that.
this summer, we have seen the impact. We have seen Plain Rainbows be a physical presence in Colorado Pride. Thank you, Mary. We have seen Plain Rainbows have a physical presence in Pennsylvania. Thank you, Chris and BJ. And also to all of our guests, we're going to be going through some of our highlights and our thoughts on that on this episode.
Yeah. And
And yeah, and also the August issue of Outfront magazine. If you have not got your copy, please do so because Plain Rainbows has a nice write up and some art by BJ.
yeah, that's a really good place to start. I think we should talk a little bit about the pushback that we expected. Do you
Yeah,
have any
yeah,
thoughts on that?
I do. And it's to be expected. Whenever someone in from an Amish community or from a Plain community, a Mennonite community, whenever they go against the grain in any way, there's pushback and they are silenced, and they are talked over. And that's one of the quotes I love from you, Mary, is stop talking over us, which was in the Outfront um, magazine article is, yeah, stop talking over us. And that's exactly what Mary and I are both facing at the moment is there's ex-Amish charlatans and ex-Amish people pushing their own religious agenda, and they are definitely using the Plain Rainbows podcast to talk over us and to score points off us and double down on their homophobia and their ignorance. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if they left the Amish 2 months ago or 20 years ago. They took a lot of that mentality with them, and it's pretty obvious they haven't grown or um, you know um, been
You haven't.
exposed to other viewpoints. They are in that Amish world, in that Amish bubble, and it's a pretty toxic place to be.
Do you think they've challenged their views on homosexuality or LGBTQ folks in any form, shape, or way?
Well, I'm sure, just hearing the stories and realizing that there's a lot of gay Amish out there is probably very eye-opening. However, their reaction to that is fear-based, and that's where they're coming from. They're coming from a place of fear. They fear change, they fear the Amish church becoming more accepting and open. There's people that have vested interest in keeping the Amish closed and the homophobia alive and well. Um, and that's just a fact of life with our background.
This is the truth.
But,
So, with
like I said, I think, to recap something I said from, I think, our first season or our first episode was the Amish are basically disgruntled Catholics.
yep, they really are. I think that part of it is when when you continue to hold on to the traditions, because like I don't know about your community, James, but certainly in my community and when I was growing up, like a lot of what I heard was because we've always done it this way. It's just the way from the forefathers. Like it's the way of our forefathers. And so to fear change to that extent, like you can't, it's really hard for anybody to challenge that. And my heart goes out to them, but I really hope that someday they can understand that just because people are LGBTQ and Amish or Anabaptist, like that doesn't mean that they're going to hell. Thank you.
Right,
Like
right.
that's really at the end of the day, like that's really one of the big things that I think is when you talk about the fear-based response, I feel like it's rooted in that.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and it's like our first, well, no, our second guest, Dr. Reverend Raymond Anderson,
Right.
said, like, representation matters, seeing yourself matters, and for us to see ourselves, like, I think back to when I was a kid and or a young adult even, and looking. I like my saving grace was a library card. I was a bookworm as a kid, as an adult, I still am, but like reading really opened my eyes to the world at large. And, on one hand, I think of the Amish that don't have that privilege. But, even back then, I remember trying to, I was looking for myself, I was looking to see a gay Amish story, and there was none.
Which leads to today. Now there are gay Amish stories.
Well, now there are, but back then, the
Yep.
closest thing I could get to was Oscar Wilde,
Oh.
Truman Capote, James
Oh.
Baldwin, all those amazing writers who, they weren't Amish, but our struggle was the same, and I understood that. But, again, a library card really is a privilege in the Amish community, and a lot of Amish are, really unaware of LGBTQ history in general, even removing Amish out of that equation.
Yes. I absolutely agree that they're very unaware. I think that the more that we have material and we're visible, I think that the more things will change. And I want to say that because like one of the things that I know we talk about frequently is like if you have a message for, current Amish and Anabaptists that are LGBTQ, um, I think it's so important to record it because we never know who's going to come across our content, James. You
Yeah,
never
that
know.
is true. I mean, the Amish. What is the population? I know we've went around about this several times. Is it like 500,000 in America,
I
North
think
America,
so. Right.
roughly? And that's a pretty large group of people.
Right. And then, some of the Amish groups of people, like they may have cell phones, they may have forbidden cell phones, they may, be out in their barn with their forbidden cell phones, and who knows, maybe they'll find plain rainbows.
Well, yeah, back in the day in my hometown, I definitely worked retail, and I recall ringing up a lot of Amish buying Google Play cards and cell phones and things. So I know firsthand that Amish have cell phones, because I sold them to them.
Well, I can tell you that, huh?
Yeah, no, so I
The
know they have cell phones, at least in
right.
Indiana and Michigan. Absolutely.
Right, and those are, like, generally probably not considered, like, the good Amish, like, they may be considered, like, fence pushers or, they're crowding the fence, but they exist, and if they're doing that, they're desperately looking for help, in my opinion, looking for some kind of visibility for themselves, some kind of representation, and that is why it is so important to understand why we have to be visible.
That's very true. And I mean, if you look at any religion in the world, there's a gay and coming out story related to that religion.
Yep,
Um, whether growing up gay and Buddhist, growing up gay and Muslim, growing up gay and Catholic.
Yep.
and the 500,000 branches of Protestantism in this country right now. I mean, I mean, don't get me started
Right.
on.
Right. There's like so many coming out stories, and some of those stories are beautiful, and their families receive them as they are and still love them, and some of them are horrible, and some of them, people face being killed for
And
being
persecuted,
LGBTQ,
absolutely.
and
Right.
they absolutely face persecution, and it's just important to really have these conversations, I believe.
It is, and it's ironic, that the early Anabaptists, which were what we would consider the first Amish people, they left Europe because not only were they persecuted by the Catholic Church, they were persecuted by fellow Protestants who didn't agree with their religious ideology. So they immigrate to America for freedom of religion. And now that they're established here, they use their freedom of religion to persecute their LGBTQ minority.
Yeah, it's quite shocking when you think about it in that context because they were the rabble rousers, they were the fence crowders, the fence pushers, whatever you want to call them. That was who our ancestors were. That's the whole reason why Amish exists today.
Right, right.
So you could just say that we're just holding up to tradition, James. We're
Yes,
holding up
yes,
tradition.
yes. I'm just an old fashioned boy.
you know, yeah, Yep, we're just holding up tradition. We're continuing to crowd the fence and try to one show that we exist and there's some kind of visibility for us. Um,
Well, yeah,
as
and to double down on that point, it's like the Anabaptists were standing up, to the Catholic Church, and now all these years later, we're standing up to the Amish Church, who pretty much mirror the Catholic Church in terms of their views on sexuality. So at the end of the
yep,
day, this is really a shared struggle with all of us. And we will win. We're on the side of love. They're on the side of hate and ignorance, and that that
yep.
does not work in this world that we live in today.
No, it really doesn't. And then I also wanted to go back and second what you said, double down on one of your points where you talk about a thank you to all of our guests. I really want to thank our artist, BJK. Um, she just did this wonderful job of representing and creating artwork that speaks to some of the struggles that LGBTQ Amish and Anabaptists may face. And I felt like it was so meaningful to even me because some of those representations just really made me feel like I was visible.
Right.
So
And that
thank
goes
you.
to like I talked about gay Amish books. Well, another art form besides literature is painting, art. And so there hasn't really been an artist delving into gay Amish themes in any way. So that's groundbreaking in itself. Just plain,
Right.
plain Anabaptist, not necessarily Amish, but yeah, bringing those two worlds together like that. That's pretty amazing.
It's incredible. So thank you again, BJ. And then
Yeah,
I
thank
wanted to say thank you to our guests as well, Serafina, Raymond, Fred, Chris, Joey, the Ruth Ellis Center, John Tell. I really wanted to talk a little bit about like what each of you brought to the table. He brought to the table spirituality. What is being transgender? Um, what is it like being non-binary and former playing? Um, spiritual journeys, learning to love yourself and not to hate yourself for who you are when it has been ingrained in you for your whole life that you are wrong just for existing.
right.
I just, it's profound. It's really profound. And then the fact that there's resources out there for you where people will help you. That's also incredible because it's important that we all know that there are resources for LGBTQ folks and that we can connect people with the appropriate resources. So what are
Right.
some things that you think that people really need if they're trying to get out of and come out if they're LGBTQ and an Amish or Anabaptist, James?
Yeah, well, they're going to need support and they're going to need to remove themselves from their plain environment, whether it's Amish or Mennonite or variation
Hooter,
thereof. Yeah,
Hutterites, Quakers,
Quakers,
even some,
right?
yeah, even some Southern Baptists kind of fall along those lines of beliefs, to be honest.
Yeah, and I know that in our episode, we touched on that with, I think, Fred. You know, it's like you kind of got to walk away from that world to get away. You just got to, you just have to leave it all behind. And that's really hard to for some people to even begin to comprehend, let alone put into action. But it's true, because your Amish environment is not a safe space for you.
Well, and another thing is sometimes like some people, they're afraid because they might lose their livelihood, they might lose their home, they might lose their entire family. They're afraid of like losing their community, and they might be left destitute with nothing.
Right, right. And
And they
chances
might
are,
not even exist. Some of them might not have birth certificates or even like social security numbers or, any form of valid ID or ability to get a job.
that is true. That is true.
So some of the things that I've thought about as resources is like, um, going to a community college, getting a GED, um, job centers where they learn how to write a resume and how to have a job interview, how to navigate it when you might have lost all your previous job references because they were of the community that has now cast you out and
Right,
shunned you, and assistance in getting and applying for a birth certificate, social security card, sometimes even needing driving lessons. Some people need to have driving lessons so they can get a driver's license, and others may not. That's because, Amish communities are widely varied, and some of them, they're really, really, really liberal and they drive cars. And some of them will forever drive a horse and buggy at this point, it feels like.
right.
So
So
I think
yeah,
for
resources are definitely needed.
But I think for me, I would say that it depends on the person. Like every person has a different experience, and then, you know, they can find resources for what they need. Which is why
Right.
the Ruth Ellis Center was so wonderful because they were talking about the LGBTQ struggle and how, like, often these they will help folks who are displaced, who are homeless, who need therapy. That's another thing is people do need some form of therapy from a trauma informed counselor.
Yeah, yeah, and there's an update for us. Is congratulations to the Ruth Ellis Center on receiving $1 million donation.
Yes.
Congratulations. That is freaking amazing, and I
That
am
is
so proud. Um, and that ensures that the Ruth Ellis Center is here to stay, baby.
that is absolutely incredible. Just incredible. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, and and like a point that we came across, in that episode was, you don't have to live in Michigan for you to have resources. Every state has their own version of a Ruth Ellis Center.
Yep.
PFLAG, the Trevor Project. If you are looking for resources, those are two organizations that would be very helpful for you.
And they're all across the country, not just in one state.
That's right.
Like
And
they're,
also in North America and Canada, shout out to the Amish that are in Canada. There's a few of you we know.
mm-hmm, yep,
So, and Canada, I'm sure, has their own resources. They're a pretty progressive country. And
well, yeah. I'm just, I, I really think that it is everywhere that you go. Like if you just know how to find resources. Like today's the day of the internet. There is Google. Google is your friend. And you can go Google some resources, like specific ones. Like if you
yeah,
need help finding a job, like you could go Google like job centers or like assistance finding a job in your town.
yes.
So it's a really important to remember that Google is your friend.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, yeah, if you are LGBTQ, Amish, Anabaptist, Mennonite, Plain, and you are seeking resources, by all means, Google the Trevor Project, PFLAG, your state. You have resources that are available for you. So, by all means, seek out
Yep,
what you need. Yeah.
yep, absolutely. And then another thing was, so we had John Tell stand in for James. That was a really interesting episode.
I loved it so much. Thank you so much, Chantal. You were amazing. And the conversation was so necessary. And, bless all the people that live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, because Mary and I just can't do that.
I
We
just,
cannot.
no, I just can't. I'm so sorry. I love you folks. I really just can't. But I want to point out something else
Yes.
about John Till that was beautiful is that, people may think that just because primarily most old order Amish churches we don't go out and proselytize. We don't generally, there's nobody joining our churches, but there are also churches, Amish churches, Mennonite churches, where they adopt children, and those children are black or brown and of a different nationality. And so it's important to have that visibility as well. But I don't feel like I can really speak to what their struggle is. I just know that it is awful, and the stories that I have heard, they break my heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Um,
thank you, John Tell. Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Um, And Joey's episode, having, hearing Joey's story, which I know touched a lot of people, seekers, people that joined the Amish, looking for a spiritual, whether you want to call it salvation or, their spiritual path, and then finding out that, the Amish are not, in fact, the fountain of enlightenment. They are spiritually, they are I guess devolving. They are being hijacked by other conservative right wing um religions and absorbing their political viewpoints and intolerance, really. I would say that the Amish are growing more intolerant, more homophobic, more out of touch because, we're kind of at a tipping point where, it's put up or shut up time. You need to engage with the world. You need your own help and resources. And rather than do that, it's kind of like double down and on our original positions. And it's leading to a lot of dysfunction within the Amish, which is why we see these horrible news stories every so often, whether it's about abuse or some situation. Yeah, things are not well within the Amish communities, and we are all aware of that.
Correct. And when you're talking about things are not well, I think you're also talking about like even spiritually things are not well.
Yes, yes.
Which we're at about 5 minutes or 6 minutes from our stopping point. So I kind of wanted to ask you if you had a message for anybody that may be currently Amish and listening.
Sure. Again, it goes back to what we're talking about is, you need to step out of your environment and you need to know that there's people that can help you do so. Um, you just need to find the resources in your state and probably just remove yourself completely from your original environment, whether it's Amish or Mennonite or whatever, and if you want to go back to that later, obviously you can. Um, the Amish have a system set up for those that stray into the world and then go back.
They
So,
really do.
they do. And so, but, if you want to be true to yourself, if you want to truly be happy, you're probably going to have to step away from that world. And there are people that can help you do that and can help you set up your own life. And so that you can have authenticity and, you have new freedoms that you have never imagined.
Yep.
Life on the
Re-
outside is pretty great.
It is. It's pretty amazing. I will vouch for that. I just can't even, yeah. I will absolutely vouch for that. Life on the outside has been very great for me as well. And I'd like to add to James's statement, and I'd like to say, you guys, whoever you are, if you're Amish and Plain, or if you're LGBTQ, if you're listening to this and you're in a bad situation, I just want you to know that you deserve to exist. You deserve to be free from the chains of oppression and of spiritual abuse. You are worthy of love and acceptance, and you deserve that wherever you go. And then I would also like to give one more shout out to our guests, and I want our guests to know that I feel y'all gave a voice to the voiceless. You gave visibility to the invisible people. You gave
Amen.
hope for those who are plain rainbows. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Serafina.